Once again, welcome to the second day of our international conference themed constitutional provisions and the status of previously marginalized languages. May the following people come and sit in front. We have Dr. Maja, Mr. Dima Peta from Sunrise Sign Language Academy, then the chairperson of ZIPLA, Mr. Marginalised. They come and sit in front. Already with Dr. Maja here. Mr. Mapeta, ZIPLA representative or chairperson. I'm sure Mr. Marginalised is still on his way. That's Mr. Mapeta. Okay. People are still coming. We are Africans, so don't worry. They will come. Our measure of time is not the time itself, but the sun. Yes. That's part of our culture. There's nothing we can do about it. I think we need to have a conference on time. Dr. Yes. Time management. Yeah. Right, Dr. Maja is going to come forward and give us his keynote address. He is going to focus on language rights in Zimbabwe. He is a lawyer, so lawyers always want to talk about rights. Dr. Maja, you can come forward and take us through your presentation.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Are we well? Good. Today I'm just going to take you through some of the constitutional provisions that are available, some of the constitutional provisions that relate to language rights and explain possible meanings of those particular provisions. As you are aware, our 2018 Constitution is almost 4 years now, and there's been very little in terms of jurisprudence coming from the courts that explains the meaning of the rights that are associated with language that are provided for in the Constitution. So I will use international law to try to explain some of the provisions of the Constitution, and I will also use some of the interpretations that have been given by South African courts, because as you will see, our Section 6 of the Constitution is substantially similar to the one that's there in South Africa, and there's been various interpretations of that. But I will focus on a number of provisions and then zero in on Section 6 of the Constitution. If time permits me, I will go through a few of some of the provisions in the languages bill. There's currently a languages bill that has been drafted. I was heavily involved in the drafting of that particular bill. So if time permits, I will also go through some of the provisions to see how our government is trying as much as possible to ensure that language rights are implemented in that regard. I hadn't started the PowerPoint, that's why I wasn't using this. That's fine. So you then notice that language rights are basically classified into two. There are plenty of classifications, but you can look at them from two perspectives. The first perspective is individual language rights. These are given and exercised by an individual without association with any group. As you are aware, human rights from 1948, human rights are predominantly given to individuals. So you have this whole issue of individual human rights coming from there. And then you have collective language rights. These are rights given to individuals, but in their capacity as members of a certain group, in their capacity as members of a certain group. Article 27 of the International Convention, Current Convention on Civil and Political Rights, talks about persons belonging to minority groups. There has been argument to say there are what are called group rights that are afforded to groups, but you don't find much of that expression in international law. So that's why I didn't put it there. And then you will notice that in terms of what language rights are aimed at, they are aimed at two things. The first thing is basically to ensure that all language speakers are placed on a substantially equal footing within a country. And then the second aim is that they are aimed at preserving the linguistic identity of all speakers. And this will become important as we analyze some of the provisions of the Constitution in that light. And you'll also notice that those two aims are achieved in two ways. One, by provision of general individual human rights that are relevant to promote equality between all language speakers, and then you have minority-specific human rights that protect the identity of language speakers and the use of their language. So you have individual human rights. They are not specifically afforded to specific language speakers, but to everyone. Everyone has a right to those. They will go through some of those particular provisions, but they have a bearing on the exercise or on the protection of language rights in that regard. And then you have minority-specific ones, like your Section 6, as we then analyze Section 6, that deals specifically with language groups, specific language groups, especially the minority ones or the marginalized minorities. Others would prefer to call them indigenous, but I mean, it's a whole discussion. I don't want to get into there. There are lots of differences in that. I understand there's a section that will deal with that particular aspect later on, so I won't even delve into that. Now, when you look at individual human rights, I'll just go through a couple of them that you find in the Constitution that have a bearing on languages. The first one is the whole issue of equality and non-discrimination that you find in Section 56 of the Constitution, where there are two provisions that are crucial there. The one is equality before the law, where everyone is equal. It doesn't matter what language that you speak, you are equal. And then the other side of it is that you cannot be discriminated or unfairly discriminated on the basis of language. Even though this right is for everyone, you will notice that every language speaker can actually use that particular right, even minority language speakers in that regard. And you will notice that in that regard, there is the whole issue of formal equality vis-a-vis substantive equality. When we look at formal equality, it basically talks about sameness in treatment despite the circumstances that people find themselves in. So you'll find that if you use that particular approach, it doesn't really address the inequalities that have been there to different language speakers, as has been said by previous speakers. But substantive equality then looks at the history of discrimination of language speakers, and then they try as much as possible to provide measures like affirmative action measures that we basically find in Section 6 of the Constitution, to try as much as possible to promote those languages and the language speakers that have been previously discriminated against. So that is important. And what's captured in Section 56 is substantive equality. Then you have your right to use language in Section 63. It doesn't clarify whether it's public use or private use, but in international law, private use is not a problem. Where the problem arises is public use of a language, particularly for government business. To what extent can a language be allowed to be used for government business? And I will discuss that in depth when we talk about Section 6 of the Constitution in that regard. But there is a normative deficiency in Section 63 in that there is no clarity as to how that particular right ought to be achieved. And the other right that you find is freedom of expression and freedom of media. Freedom of expression in terms of international law has been held to mean freedom of linguistic expression. And then freedom of media, you will notice that international law obliges states to ensure that language speakers have access to media by allotting them airtime or frequencies where they will use their own languages. There is no obligation for the state to support private media institutions, but linguistic minorities or those that are marginalized can establish their own media outlets at their own cost. Basically, that's what you find in international law. And Section 61 is quite silent when it comes to what extent is that going to be addressed. It was addressed a little bit in the languages bill. That's almost to go to parliament. And you'll notice that there is language rights in criminal proceedings. In terms of international law, there's no guarantee that you'll be tried in a criminal court, you'll be tried in a language that you speak. But a person is supposed to be tried in a language that they understand. So if you don't understand, it will be proper for a court to sit and deliberate in English. And if you don't understand English, they will then provide a competent interpreter for you. It will be in line with international law to do that particular kind of thing. And you find that expression in Section 70, subsection 1J of the Constitution. So the right to interpretation becomes a very critical right in that particular regard. Though it's afforded to everyone, language speakers can leverage on that particular right in that regard. And then there's the right to education, which you find in Section 25 and predominantly Section 75 of the Constitution. It says basically everyone has a right to basic education, basic education, which may be interpreted to mean primary education in that particular regard. But they can be leveraged from a language perspective. When you look at issues of mother tongue education that you find in international law, you realize that it's not guaranteed by international law, but there's now recognition that mother tongue education is very crucial and critical in the conveyance of knowledge. And there has been a move to try as much as possible to make mother tongue education as compulsory as possible. So this is one provision that can be used to advance minority or language rights in Zimbabwe. And then there's the issue of curriculum development. International law basically says in developing curriculum, states should take a multicultural approach that reflects the cultures of all linguistic groups, cultures of all linguistic groups. You guys know these things very much. It says language is an expression of culture, so you can basically protect language rights using that aspect. And then the establishment of independent education institutions, there's no obligation on government, but linguistic minorities can establish their own entities teach in the language that they want to teach. So the Karanga can do that, the Tonga can do that without interference from government in that regard. And then when it comes to the specific language rights, which is basically what we want to zero in, you basically then find expression in section 6 of the Constitution, and it talks about 4 key things. And I like the way that they expressed it, because it then puts out the theme. Subsection 1 as a theme, subsection 2 as a theme, subsection 3 as a theme, and subsection 4 as a theme. And I'm going to discuss those and explain what it means from a legal perspective. And those are the 4 themes that you find in section 6 of the Constitution. Very much celebrated, but very little to offer. If I may say that in advance, very little to offer. But let's look at it. Section 6.1 talks about the Constitution granting 16 languages. It says that they are officially recognized. Now, they shied away from affording proper official language status to the 16 languages. What does officially recognized mean? Does it mean they are all official languages for Zimbabwe in that particular regard? I understand there was a political negotiation that then led to the writing of this. So it was more of just recognizing the languages without being bold to say we're going to recognize them as official languages in Zimbabwe. So you don't have an official language in Zimbabwe if you interpret section 66 very well. You don't necessarily have an official language in Zimbabwe, but you have 16 languages that are officially recognized with no explanation as to what that means. We are yet to find out from the courts what that particular issue means. So there is no definition of official language, there is no explanation of the legal implications of officially recognized language. In other jurisdictions, they have official languages and they have officially recognized languages. Languages that a state will officially recognize as existent in a nation. So it's not quite clear what Zimbabwe would want to do in that particular regard. And then the third weakness that you find in section 6.1 is that it doesn't guarantee the use of the officially recognized languages. So when there is no guarantee for use, the challenge that you find, and it's predominant in international law, is that they will basically be there as symbolic languages. Basically, the recognition is really symbolic without use. And we have situations like that in South Africa, where the bulk of what they've called, South Africa was bold to call them official languages, but what they've called official languages are hardly used in the business of government. And we might have a situation where the bulk of these languages are basically symbolic. We are yet to see how they will use those particular languages, but section 6 does not guarantee the use of those languages. I've just put up a few definition of what language, an official language is. Basically, it's a language used in the business of government. We are hoping that that will be the approach that was adopted. That's the approach that I recommended for the bill, and they seem to have taken that. So it could help, it could assist in that particular regard. And the designation of a language as official is basically a political process. It's a political process, depending with the power nations that are basically there. It's a political process. And you realize that in section 6, it doesn't even highlight the criteria that the state has to use in basically designating a language as official. That's again one of the weaknesses that are there. But in international law, these are some of the things that are basically looked at before designating a language as an official language. The number of people who speak the language, the level of development of a language, the extent of use, the history of discrimination of language speakers, and then the functional load of the language in government business. So they use that in designating a language, an official language. And in internet, there's this guy, interesting guy, Vietes, who has classified officiality in 4 ways, which government could basically use. There's what is called full officiality and dominant language, where an official language is an official language for the entire country and is dominantly used in the business of government. The second one is full officiality but non-dominant. It's an official language for the entire country, but it's hardly used, it's minimally used in government business. Partial or limited officiality and dominant language, it can be official in a region, like in Matabeleland, the Wele can be the official language and it's predominantly used there. That's the situation that's envisaged there. And then you have partial or limited officiality and non-dominant, where language status is given in a territory, but again it's minimally used in the business of government. It's not clear from Section 6 which approach our government is going to take in that particular regard, and that's a lacuna that we find there. And then Section 6, subsection 2 talks about language of record. I mean, it doesn't define it. It doesn't define what a language of records basically is. It doesn't even talk about the criteria that needs to be followed to determine what a language of record is. But there are 3 approaches that I suggested. One of them is English to be formally declared the language of record, because it is anyway. I think as it currently states, it is basically the language of record. So it will be formally recognized in English as the language of record that is basically used for business, for government business communication in that regard. Another approach is to have English as the language of record throughout the country, and other languages to be languages of record where they are mainly spoken together with English. So you can have English as the language of record for the whole country, but in Binga, for instance, the language of record will be English and Tonga, because the people there, they predominantly speak that particular language. So this could be an approach that can be used by the languages bill or by government to try to implement the provisions of Section 6 of the Constitution. Or you can have a situation where you have different languages that are being used as languages of record in areas where they are mainly spoken. So you don't have one language of record throughout the whole country, but you have different languages of record in different countries, but in different provinces or areas where they are spoken. But any of these approaches would work, or even the second approach seems better. It appears to accommodate, I think it's a better place to accommodate linguistic diversity in that particular regard. Then Section 6.2 of the Constitution, it doesn't even reveal that if the government chooses one language of record like English as it stands, there is an aspiration to have all those other languages as languages of record. There's no such provision that you find in Section 6, which could be critical in that there could be instances where government can give itself 10 years to then say some of the languages that we have officially recognized are not yet developed to an extent of them becoming languages of record. But in 10 years, let's progressively develop all the languages, so that they are at least languages of record in the areas where they are mainly spoken. And you find a little bit of that in the Law Society model constitution that they had proposed in that particular regard. So it could be a good provision to include, particularly in the Act of Parliament, just to make sure that that aspiration is kept alive in the law and government can be held accountable in that regard. Then the third thing that you find in Section 6, subsection 3, is the equitable treatment of languages, not equal. Equitable. Those are two different things. When you talk about equitable treatment, you're basically talking about just and fair treatment of languages. That's they take into account language preferences of the persons in the areas that people speak those languages and people that are affected by government measures and communications. This section, in my humble view, does not even oblige the state to use the 16 officially recognized languages. So you find in international law there's no guarantee for use of those particular languages. And then from best practices, the use ranges from just symbolic use to limited use to unlimited use in public administration, public education, public health, public media, in courts and in government business. So there may be need for government to be compelled to use the language, which you don't find there. But what's there is basically fair treatment of all languages to people that are already victims, that are already affected by government measures in that particular area. So I will not celebrate much Section 6, subsection Section 3. So what was then recommended in the bill was to then provide for use of language in different spheres of government. And that was taken. I think I'll just leave this with Dr. Ngoma. You can then, I'll send a soft copy as well. It can then be circulated so that people can have a copy of that and also comment on that before it goes to Parliament. But you then find in that particular bill that there are various sections that talk about use of government, use of languages in media, use of languages in courts, use of languages in public service. There were recommendations that they may be used particularly in the areas where they are predominantly spoken. Basically, that was there because of the financial and the cost implications that will come with it. The final one that you will find there is promotion of use and development of language. Promotion of not use, but promotion of use. There's a difference between use of a language and promotion of use of a language. With use, you actually use the language. Promotion of use, you are not obliged to actually use it. You just take measures that will go as much as possible to promote the use of that particular language. There is no benchmark. If you don't use it, there is no obligation to do it. But you simply need to promote as much as possible. And if a minister stands today and says, no, we have to make sure that Tonga is used predominantly in it's promotion of use. It will amount to promotion of use. Whether it's then used or not used is neither here nor there. So what the Constitution guarantees is promotion of use, not actual use of language. And the bar is basically very low when it comes to that. And then with use, if you don't use it, there are remedies that are available. You can actually go to court and hold government accountable for not doing it. With promotion of use, you can't. So you can't go to court and say, they failed to promote the use of my language. That becomes very difficult to do. That's the difficulty that's there. And then in the promotion of use, the government has absolute discretion to do that. When it's obliged to use, you can hold them accountable using the law. There's an obligation for government to actually use that particular language. So that's what you find in Section 6, subsection 4 of the Constitution. And there are different missing links that are called lacunas in Section 6. The first one is that you don't have any administrative mechanism or any mechanism for implementation of the language rights. Go to South Africa, you have a Pan-South African Languages Board that takes complaints on language rights violations, that promotes the use of language, that actually ensures that government uses those particular languages. And you don't have that in the Constitution. But what we have recommended and there has been put in the bill is the establishment of a language board that will then make sure that it ensures that government uses the languages. Government develops those particular languages. It also takes complaints whenever there are language violations that are there just to fill in the gap that has been left by Section 6. and some of the people that they took section 10, 11, some of the people that are then appointed to the board are experts like you, and you have translators, you have quite a number of people that are involved in language planning and language use that will be part and parcel of that particular board, so that if government does not use that particular language, they can then be held accountable using the law. So you now have the languages bill coming in to try as much as possible to give flesh to the missing elements that you find in section 6 of the Constitution, and I'm hoping it will pass through Parliament and be promulgated in that regard. And then administrative mechanisms to oversee the implementation of language rights, and then political mechanisms. You don't have any of those in section 6 of the Constitution. And then if you read it well, how many of their constitutions with them? Good, I want you to go to section 6 as I go. I want you to notice two things. Section 6 is not part and parcel of the Bill of Rights. Is that right? So it's basically found in provisions. Can you go to court and challenge a government on the basis of founding provisions? That's number one. Number two, there are no rights that are provided for in section 6. In fact, what you find there are state obligations. Again, can you go to court and challenge government on the basis of state obligations? That will depend on the interpretation that's basically then given by our constitutional court. Because if you look at the European Minority Languages Charter, it's expressed in the form of state obligations. But the European court has basically held that you can actually go to court and enforce the rights that are provided for in that particular charter, even though they are expressed as state obligations. So that's the kind of proposal that we have made to then say, if this is the Constitutional Court should implement this, they can actually declare that you can enforce section 6 of the Constitution. If it doesn't, the proposal that was then made to the draft languages bill is actually to translate what has been placed in section 6 as rights. So you have sections in the languages bill that will tell you that a person has a right to use their language, a person has a right to use this, which will then make sure that at least section 6 is operationalized. Otherwise, on its own, it offers very little to language speakers in that particular regard. I think that those will be my observations. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madia, for a very lucid presentation, I would say. Can we give him another round of applause? Thank you very much. I'm going to take about 5 questions. I know people have questions on this very interesting presentation. Questions or comments? Any questions or comments? Mr. Jambo, do we have another mic? Okay, thank you. You can give it to him.
Mine got a question.
Okay.
The talk was very enlightening, and we all always talk about multidisciplinary approaches to academia. I think we need you in our discipline to enlighten our students on some of these very important issues that you're raising. Thank you.
Thank you. The commendation. All right, another comment or question, point of clarification. You can just pass on to the next person. Then you take it later.
Thank you very much. I think it's more or less like a comment, and I think it follows up on your government can call English or can afford English the status of language of record on the basis that it is an already established language anyway. I realize that maybe part of our problem is in our endeavor to elevate the statuses of all the other formerly marginalized languages was the fact that we really didn't have a well-developed literature in those particular languages. And I think an integral, crucial part of any language policy is to ensure that there is both the language, the status and corpus planning in that particular language. So it is one thing to just accord some status to a language. That may be Chewanda, Kalanga, has been an officially recognized language, which I thought was really an official language. But what my point here is saying, for that to be truly effective and relevant to our socio-linguistic situation, we need to develop literature in those particular languages. That is grammar books, novels, and whatnot and what. So that when we are trying now to implement that particular language policy, we do not have a situation whereby we want to teach Kalama, but there is no Kalama in the class, there is no dictionary, there is no grammar book, there are no novels or any literature to study. So at the end of the day, we end up reverting to Shona or Ndelele by as the default setting.
I also want to thank you for this interesting presentation, and thank you so much for bringing this interdisciplinary perspective to the whole thing. My concern relates to issues of interpreting in our courts. I've seen in most of the cases, or almost all the cases, when one is legally represented, that particular person is not entitled to an interpreter. So you are physically there but linguistically locked out of the proceedings because of the language barrier. So I think, and I'm proposing that in our language bill, we must also take note of that and include that line to say that in as much as you are there, we must even guarantee the presence of an interpreter even if we are legally represented, because it's not enough to have an interpreter if you are not legally represented. Because I can be there legally represented, but I can't understand English, but I need to follow, the proceedings as they happen at that particular point in time.
Okay. Thank you. I also wish to commend the presenter for a very insightful presentation. Part of what I wanted to contribute has already been said by the speaker, so I will not repeat it, but I just want to emphasize on the point of the language bill to say I think it's really a critical endeavor, and I hope that the language bill will provide for the formation of a body, like for example, what we have, like the Law Society of Zimbabwe, the MEDI, or the Health Professions Authority of Zimbabwe, where linguistic players are also included in their relevant sections, like translators, interpreters, then sub-categorized in their professions, like a body for court interpreters, a body for medical interpreters, educational interpreters, and so forth. I really think that would be helpful.
Thank you, Doc, for a succinct presentation. I just want to find out on the fact that Section 6 finds itself in the founding principles rather than in the Bill of Rights. Was it the decision of the drafters for it to be situated in the founding principles, or whose decision was that? Thank you.
Okay, let's allow him to respond to the questions so that we can have another round of questions.
Thank you very much for the kind comments that you have given. Thank you so much. On the issue of language of record, thanks a lot for those comments. But what has happened elsewhere is that the languages that we have recognized in our constitution, they are developed in other countries. So one of the ways in which you can quickly make sure that they can be used for government business is at least get the material from elsewhere, then twitch it a little bit to suit our circumstances. In this period of 5-10 years, most of those, if not all, the languages that are provided for in Section 6 can actually be used as languages of record. So it will entail use of resources to do that. But it's one of the easier ways in which we can basically have all the 16 languages used as languages of record. And then the issue of interpretation, thank you so much. I think we will take that into account. But the general understanding that was there, basically, was that if you are legally represented, your lawyer follows the proceedings. They will explain. If you don't understand the bulk of those particular proceedings, they will explain those particular proceedings. But it would be good to go further, as you have indicated. I've taken note the issue of the bond that you spoke about, and that will be, I think that can be included in some of the feedback to the bill. And then was it the decision of the drafters to put it in founding provisions? No, it was the decision of the political affairs that were there. Because if it was placed in the Bill of Rights, it could be enforceable, you could easily hold government accountable to it. So it was placed in the founding provisions just to show the aspirations that the government had at that particular time. Because if it was in the Bill of Rights, you could quickly go to court and enforce it. But my belief is that there's a bit of jurisprudence from elsewhere that actually shows some cases from other countries, like Canada, South Africa, that shows that you can actually go to court on the basis of founding provisions. I don't know how our constitutional court is going to interpret that. But in other jurisdictions, people have actually gone to court and they've used founding provisions. They'll just link it to one of the rights, for instance. You can use Section 63, the right to use the language, and link it with Section 6, because Section 63 is already in the Bill of Rights. Link it to Section 6. I'm sure a plausible case can actually come out of it. But it was a political decision, not one by the drafters. Thank you so much.
Are there any follow-up questions? Just two.
I think this question is related to what I raised yesterday, that if ever these decisions are political, it might also mean that even the exclusion of certain languages in the Constitution might also be political. Like I find it, very unfair, the exclusion of Chikunda in the national Constitution. Because when you look at it, Chikunda has got an orthography, Chikunda has got a Bible, there's so much literature, it's there on the television. We've got news in Chikunda, we've got news at the national FM. So there's so much literature about Chikunda. Chikunda is spoken from Mvurwi, Guruwe, Dande, Mahuwe, Mushumbi, Kanemba, Chapoto, Luangwa in Zambia. But you find that, some of the languages that were included in the Constitution do not even match to that, high status of Chikunda. So you find that this might be political. To me, as I said, I think you have tried to answer me there when you say that these decisions are made, politically, and they do not consider much the practical, material that is on the ground. Yeah.
You comment to that good person. All right. The last question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Amanda, for that. But I'm just wondering the concept of linguistic rights outside a well-articulated language policy within policy. Because if you notice, you are making references to South Africa. I'm not sure about the South African Constitution, perhaps Prof can help us, where they do enlist all those language boards. But what really happens with those particular language boards, I'm not very sure of that. So as long as we are operating in a context where the language board or even the Constitution itself, or outside an articulated, well-planned language policy, I think this will fall on deaf ears. And also, remember our attitude. Let's look at law, for example, the delivery of justice. It is English-oriented. And we also need to take into consideration the attitudes as to whether they are positive or negative towards certain languages. Why would it be strange for a judge or a magistrate, for that matter, to be talking to the accused in Shona or in Teleni? We need to demystify that. We need to deregulate that. We need to have a really well-articulated language policy in terms of where languages can be used, such that you can take it further to the Bill of Rights. So as long as we are operating outside or we are operating under a de facto language policy, you will find that we will always have these issues at hand.
All right, thank you very much. One of the recommendations in the languages bill, particularly the language board, one of its main tasks is to develop a language policy. Quite agreed on that. We seem not to have one at all. I tried to look, I thought it was my research that failed me, but I found in terms of language policy, we have FALCONS here in different organizations, but the overall policy, no. South Africa has a policy, Canada has a policy, Belgium has, Germany has. Normally when there is a constitution like this, and there are constitutional provisions, the next step is to have a language policy that will make sure that they operationalize some of the provisions that are there, and then there is also a piece of legislation that ensures that that particular policy is lively. So one of the recommendations is that the languages board should, as much as possible, as one of its main roles, develop a language policy in consultation with all stakeholders concerned. I feel you on the issue of exclusion of the Chikunda people. I'm happy to represent you if you would want. All right, thank you. I thought I would say that on the night.
That's what lawyers normally do. They look for jobs everywhere. Thank you. Allow me, ladies and gentlemen, to move on to the next presenter. Our next presenter is Dr. Patrick Ngandini. I hope I pronounced it well. Who is Education Research Officer in the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. He is going to talk about the place of previously marginalized languages in the new curriculum framework versus the provisions of Section 6 of the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Amendment number 28. Dr. Ngandini, your time. Maybe we can have one more person while we are waiting for.
Then I can be the first one.
I want someone different from the chairperson. He's trying to abuse his
Sorry. Someone to my sister over there.
Okay, thank you. My question is directed to Dr. Maja.
Yes.
Yeah, I appreciate your presentation. You indicated that there is no jurisprudence on linguistic rights in Zimbabwe. I just want to find out from your experience what could be the cause. Is it lack of activism of the different linguistic stakeholders, or what is it? Where is the problem actually? Because if other countries have this kind of jurisdiction, I think even though Section 6 is not justiciable, but basing on the non-discrimination clause, I think something can be done about it. So I'm concerned.
Okay. My brother,
I think it's all. I just wanted to thank him that he presented while I was away here. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. I'm happy I presented with you. What normally happens is that in order for a court to come up with decisions, matters have to be brought before that particular court. What has happened in other jurisdictions is that you have robust language groups that normally mount cases in court and jurisprudence is developed. In South Africa, you notice that the Africans, most of the jurisprudence is coming from the Africans. They are the group that predominantly brings cases to courts. It may be something to really think about, to actually try to come up with different challenges where different language groups can bring cases to court, and jurisprudence can easily be developed in that particular regard. So we need to intensify a little bit on activism, yes, but actually bringing actual cases to court where there are issues of discrimination, where there are issues that deal with infringement on the right to use the language, and then we can easily push over time. Jurisprudence will be developed, but it's not limited to language rights only, but plenty of other aspects of the Constitution. So the simple reason that our Constitution has simply been there for years, and we don't have a serious culture of constitutional litigation in Zimbabwe. So that if we develop that culture, we're going to improve on the jurisprudence concerning language.
Morning, everyone. Sorry, I took the wrong gadget, but let me present our ministry's position as regards the languages. At the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, when we talk of languages, we are referring to indigenous, English, and foreign languages. That is what we mean when we say languages at the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education. We cherish the development of these languages for cultural identity. And when we are developing these languages at the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, we follow this, what we call the curriculum framework. And this is the curriculum framework which we will leave with the African Languages Department. If you want more copies of these, we can avail them. I don't know how many would you want, and this is what I was sent to bring to the chairman of the department for use, so that we work hand in glove with our university. This was supposed to be the principal director's presentation, but he's busy with something else. So if he was here, what I'm going to say is what he was supposed to say. Our language development stance is divided into 4 sections. We have got what we call the infant level, where I will not waste your time quoting the statutory instrument, this and that. We want to develop all languages which are officially recognized in the Constitution of Zimbabwe. So, at infant levels, learners must be taught in the language which is spoken in their area. So when we talk of the Binga learners, they must use the language which is common there. We don't have to impose. If we talk of Gwanda, they must use the language which is spoken in that area at infant level. This is done to encourage literacy and numeracy. And if we use these languages at a tender age, our learners are going to develop critical skills, to be critical thinkers. So when we say infant level, we are referring to ECDA to grade 2. This is what we call infant level. And at junior level, when we look at our languages, this is where the learners, that is grade 3 to 7, the learners are also expected to study one indigenous language, and this is where we introduce English as a second language. Not second in terms of speaking, but second in counting. They are doing Tonga, and they are also doing what? English. Not in terms of counting now. So our learners are expected to do, from grade 3 to 7, 2 languages. That is one indigenous language and one English language. Then from Form 1 to 4, our learners are expected to do English language, literature in English, literature in Zimbabwean indigenous languages, and indigenous languages. This is where we also have literature in Zimbabwean indigenous language as a subject now. And we are going to first examine it in 2020, we're going to first examine it in next year, 2018, for the current Form 3s. And we also have literature, indigenous languages as a subject at Form 3. So the learners who are now doing the new curriculum, that is Form grade 1, 3, 5, Form 1, Form 3, and Form 5 are the ones who are doing literature in Zimbabwean indigenous languages. And we expect you as experts, as universities, to do and produce, to do a lot of research in this area and produce literature which we are expecting as soon as possible. Then from Form 5 to Form 6, from Form 5 to Form 6, our learners are also expected or are doing indigenous literature as a subject, foreign language if they so wish. Then we also have literature in English as a subject. So everything that we do at the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education in the updated curriculum, as we call it, is there to produce patriotic citizens who can develop their culture. This is one of our stance. But in the development of this culture, we also want them to be motivated learners. For them to be motivated, they must be able to use their languages wherever they are. So we encourage the teaching of languages at all levels, from ECD to Form 6, which is our area of mandate. So we develop these languages. So we want to prepare learners who would be able to work in an indigenized economy and increasingly a globalized and competitive environment. For them to be able to do these attributes, they must be able to make use of their language too. Starting from the indigenous one, going to the foreign languages. We also expect the government and other stakeholders like you to do a lot of research in uplifting the status of our languages. And we expect the training of teachers in these, especially once a minority language, we expect to have teachers who can teach Tonga at A level. We expect to have teachers who can teach Sutu and other languages just for the development of our curriculum so that it will be taken seriously. The ministry stands, it is a ministry call, for more publications, as I alluded earlier on, in indigenous languages. Right now we are working on the production of literature in these languages. So it's high time, if you want to publish, you come and work with the ministry for the updated curriculum. And as a ministry, to encourage the teaching of languages, we are also encouraging the formation of subject associations in the different subject areas. I thank you so much for listening. That's the ministry stance.
Indeed, that's the ministry stance.
Okay. We are going to move on to the next presentation. I'm still waiting for Mr. Mandijita from ZBC. He's not yet here. So we are going to move on to Zipla. Yeah, Zipla. I almost said Zipla here. Yeah. It's what? Zipa. Zilpa. Okay, Zilpa. Thank you very much, madam. You can come forward and do your presentation. Yes, sir. No, we'll take the questions and comments after the end, at the end of the presentation. So just keep your question or comment for now.
There was no mistake to call me Zipra. I once died for this country. As a member of the ISAP, yes, and the first was Zipra. Yes. So there's some relationship. May I greet you in this form? Tumela. Nikani. Reavusa. There's only one person. Mabuya. Mapona. Salvona. Makadi. I greet you all in the name of Alre. Yes. In the name of Alre, African Languages Research Institute. Where is that thing? I'm a girl of 56, so you forgive me. I'm not yet acquainted with the use of these things. Especially when I'm supposed to press the remote way. But as a way of presenting my the information that we have in line with what has been given, may I share with you this information about who we are. Who is Zilpa? Who is Zipra? Zilpa is not Zipra. Zilpa stands for Zimbabwe Indigenous Languages Promotions Association. It is a non-political registered trust which was formed in 2001. His predecessors is Vetoka, Venda, Tonga, and Kalama. And the first chairperson was none other than the renowned journalist Usolwa Kubango, the chairperson of IZIPA. Right? And he passionately and diligently contributed to what is happening now. And also, IZIPA's membership comprises now of 12 language groups, namely Sutu, Venda, Tonga, Kalama, Nambia, Shangani, Chao, Ndau, Bare, Xhosa, Tswana, and others. And Chipunda. I'm happy. I just wanted to recruit you. Please see me after this. Now we have got 13 members. And who's called us? How do I move down? Right. You can do it there. I move fast and throw it that way. Right, our historical background, as I had mentioned, it started off as Vetoka. Then it became Zilpa after the initiative of the Batonga people who said, Baba, Pastor Mlea, may you read that sentence, that phrase in red for me?
Okay, it's
literally meaning that for those of us who grew up with our grandmothers, I think there was in Twala we unite. What do we call it, Twala and Sean? Itwala. Nice. Yes. There's no way you can kill Itwala using one finger. So you need 2 fingers in order to kill it. That's how Zilpa was developed. I think even the political parties are now adopting that. They are now coming with that phrase. Right, let's go down, madam. Right, Zilpa's vision. Right, Zilpa envisions an inclusive Zimbabwean society that embraces linguistic and cultural diversity in all the socio-economic and cultural spheres of the country. Its mission, Zilpa exists to promote the development and strengthening of indigenous languages and cultures as sources of knowledge, meaning, values, identity, and position them as key contributors to the socio-economic and cultural matrix of the country. Its values, Zilpa values its members and affiliation officers and agents who subscribe to the following values and principles: transparency and accountability, equality, diversity, commitment, innovation, and creativity, among others. Right, I'm seeing a female beside me here, and I'm now forced to say, I am the only member in this board of Zilpa, and the leading one, not only a member. We're working with a very cooperative males. Chinese. Yes, amongst us, we've got one filmmaker, a female one, and I'm very happy about it. Right. What are Zilpa activities? Among others, we have lobby and advocacy. I think we had Professor Mwanik yesterday emphasizing advocacy issues as related to cultural groups, development of teaching and learning materials, translation, research, and documentation, among others. Now, what are we saying about the provisions of Section 6 of our Zimbabwe Constitution, which was developed in 2013? First of all, I think we all know that Zimbabwe, our lawyer has already mentioned that Zimbabwe is a signatory to various international conventions. And Article 5 of UNESCO, I think it's UNESCO 1953, so I read that one, cultural diversity provides that all persons should therefore be able to express themselves and to create and disseminate their work in the language of their choice, and particularly in their mother tongue. I'm Sutu and I'm supposed to receive information, disseminate it in my language. Particularly, all persons should be entitled, don't worry about the spelling, to quality education and training that fully respects their cultural diversity. We are signatories to these conventions, and our hope as ZILPA is to see ourselves conforming to that. And also, Ngugi wa Thiong'o argues that language is a dual character. It is both a means of communication and a carrier of culture. Therefore, if a language is devalued, the culture embodied in it is also devalued. Thus, in essence, this means that if a people's language is suppressed, their identity is compromised and face extinction, and this becomes a generational case. Right? What are we saying in response? First of all, we would like to applaud our government for recognizing and committing itself to consider, these, not consider as such, to recognize these other languages. ZILPA welcomes the positive move by the government of Zimbabwe because as ZILPA members, with members from different language groups who were also involved in the constitution-making process. And we are also saying that recognition to us is welcome, although not enough so far. Let's move on. Right. So this was also an attempt, I believe, to Chimundu's question, where a translator asked this question: how can you participate in anything or compete or learn effectively or become creative in a language you are not fully proficient or literate in? Surely there is no community that can fully develop if its language is not developed. Clap your hands for me, please. If I say a point, please show my Right, thank you very much. Right, going back now to the provisions, now I'm presenting from my hard copy. I have not yet through. There's the word conclusion, it will come after I've done what I want to do now. Right, section 1A, where we are saying these languages should be officially recognized. We are saying yes, we really appreciate government for doing so. Then the other thing, the one someone, as our lawyer has already indicated, there are various issues that we think need to be addressed. Because we are saying, yes, the Constitution is there, it recognizes these languages, but we are saying it appears to be segregative. Like we have left out the Chikunda, it's not there. There is a list of 16 languages, but some languages are not yet there. In section 6A, it says it should ensure that all officially recognized languages are treated equitably. I think we all have constitutions now. There will be no need for me to read what it says. So our concern as ZILPA is no one would expect anyone to override the supreme law of the country, is what is happening now. The provisions of the Constitution on this aspect of languages foster unity and inclusivity, which is good on our part. However, the provisions leave out a lot to be desired. The term recognizes does not show commitment to us as ZILPA, does not show commitment as well as willpower. So we are saying as ZILPA, there is need to revisit this section. I heard they are talking about the Bill of Rights. These are the things that we should also take into account. Then moving on to where it says all the languages should be treated equitably. The lawyer has already said it. And we are saying, if means that all these languages should be taught equally from grade 1 ECDA to higher levels of learning without segregation on equal time basis. What is happening now, you find that Isindebele, Shona are given more time than these other languages. You find it maybe Sotho just appears once in a week, not in a day. Once is a 30 minutes lesson in a day. And we are saying in this case, we don't see equality existing. I've spoken about segregative laws, which I think we agree with our lawyer. And remember, in our constitution, if you look at our preamble, it upholds Christian values. And we are saying as Christians use the Bible, isn't it? And as we read the Bible, let us also live by the words that we read in the Bible. If you read Esther chapter 1, verse 22, it is very clear, and to me that is a constitution enough to be followed, where God sent messengers through Esther to different parts of the country, and the emphasis was the messages should be taken in the people's languages, in the provinces and its languages. And it doesn't stop there. He moves on to 1 Corinthians chapter 14, verses 9 to 11. I'm sorry for those who are not Christians, please. May you feel accommodated in this one. It's just a presentation. We are not at church. Yes. So he says, there is no language without significance. If you don't know any other person's language, which means you are a foreigner to that person. We are used to talking about foreign languages referring to English, and this one next to me, Chinese, and Chinese, French. But I'm saying, if I'm Sotho, and the sign language, I'm foreign to him. If I come and speak as I'm speaking now, I'm supposed to use what? Signs, isn't it? Yes, I become foreign to him. So they become foreigners to each other if we don't know each other's languages. Then we also realize that although this is a welcome move, there is also a violation of rights. A violation to children's rights, violation to the right to education. Our lawyer has already mentioned that, making reference to section 63, and we also have section 75 related to section 6, where in section 63 it reads, every person has the right, 1, to use the language of their choice. 2, to participate in the cultural life of their choice. Then in section 75, related to section 6, it says the same constitution under this heading, right to education, states that every citizen and resident of Zimbabwe has a right to a basic funded education. Is this happening? I believe not. Although it may be happening, but to a lesser extent, with many children dropping out of school, and we implore government to take action on that. Right. Where it says government should promote, I thought I was going to attack this, but now after having learned what the word promote means, I'm going to reserve my comment on this one. But I continue to say, if it is talking about government agents developing a literature or materials for these languages, is this really happening? Yes, when the provisions are beautiful on paper, we have brilliant ideas, but we are saying to some extent there's lack of political will. Because the production of materials for these formal marginalized languages, not formally minority languages. Remember when I refer to the Bible, I will go back to the Bible to say, in Genesis, God says, when he was creating everything that he created, do you know what he says? He said, when after having created man, yes, he said this is very good. Yes. Finally he said this is very good. And we are saying if we're created in that image of being very good, we also need very good treatment from government and from the political sphere, where we are saying all these things are influenced by politicians. And at times they even hijack programs which they don't even fulfill. Dr. Gandini is my friend, but I always forget. I have problems in pronouncing his name. There's mention of developing literature for these languages, which is a very good move. But what does it come with? Just like that on a newspaper to say produce materials by end of August, and this was on paper a week ago. Yeah. And we are saying, are we writing letters? Is a book a letter where you can say in a few minutes you have written something? Grammar books, for instance, novels, given a period of 1 month. This is why he didn't want to say it by the 31st of August. He said as soon as possible. I think that he had already realized that no, this cannot happen. So I think at times government or politicians pay lip services to what is supposed to be done, especially to the formerly marginalized languages. Ladies and gentlemen, on the issue of availability of resources, which include human capital, books, we want to say as ZILPA, we have tried to bridge the gap. We now have primary school textbooks for grade 1 and 7. Up to 7, sorry. Grade 1 up to 7 for the 6 languages, Sesotho, Tshivenda, Xitsonga, Xinambia, Xitsonga, and Isichana. Hopefully, and Chikunda, then I heard you are part of ZILPA. With an affiliation fee, a very minimal one. Just $50 we are done. Yes. So we are saying efforts have been made. But our question is it solely the duty of these language groups to produce the materials? Because I always refer to myself, make reference to a family where there is a father, mother, and children. Do I wake up in the morning as a mother or grandmother, like now I'm a grandmother of 3, sit and wait for my granddaughter Kimber to come and say, Gogo, see I'm done, what are we going to eat today? We have made provisions that there's need to develop literature. But should we wait as government for these language groups to come and say we don't have school textbooks? Yes, well, it is our duty also, but I think government should take a lead. As ZILPA, this is what we feel should be done. And finally, back to my presentation on the wall. That is not PowerPoint, please. Conclusion. We are saying these noble and brilliant provisions should be effectively implemented. Like what Masego and Dov would say, such pronouncements should precipitate into targeted efforts to develop the indigenous languages in an effort to redress the current predicament. We are still having challenges in teaching and learning material, but we are saying these noble ideas should not just remain on paper. Like what Bamboso would want to say, Africa is characterized by declaration without implementation. Let us implement. I'm happy government officials are here. We are here. We are government. But let us, the two governments should work together. If we cry, may you please come and comfort us so that we stop crying. Before I sit down, I would like to invite amongst ourselves our Pastor Mleya, who is the treasurer in the association from the Tonga language group. I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce another member of ZILPA from the Jao language group, Babandov. Right. He's African, partly African and partly something. I don't know the other part. Right, Pastor Mleya, you'll see him as he comes forward to present some of the issues that we want to share with you as ZILPA. Baba Mleya. His pastor, we can say amen as he comes down. Yes. But today doesn't have cash. Remember, I'm using soft money.
The problem of saying amen to a pastor is I might call for an offering. Thank you very much. I think our chair led that's why we made our chair in the midst of all men for a competence. I think she has covered everything that possibly was necessary to be said regarding ZILPA. And maybe the last thing that I can just add is that definitely there are some other language groups possibly that are still not reflecting on the constitution as indigenous languages that exist in Zimbabwe. If you know any of those groups, please facilitate that we connect with them. And our passion as ZILPA is to make sure that the resources that God gave to this nation in terms of human resources is harnessed for the development of the nation. We also believe so much as ZILPA that tribes are a gift of God. And being a gift of God, they are also graced with different graces. There are certain things that you find very particular about Kalanga people that are necessary for the social fabric of a nation that you may not find among the Tonga people. There are some things that you may find among the Tonga people that you may not readily find among Shona people. So these things, sometimes we undermine them, but at the end of the day, as ZILPA, we are very convinced that even if they've not been given a test to be proved that they do work, why can't we try them? If they fail, it will not be the first time that we've gone for a failing attempt. So that's our take as ZILPA. And when you become part of ZILPA, you'll be a happy person because this lady is a mother yet. So to that, without wasting much time, so that we can have enough time to interact over the reports. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Pastor. Thank you very much, Mrs. Dure. Am I right? Yeah. But you prefer to be called the girl?
The girl of 56.
Yeah, the girl of 56. Okay. Thank you very much. We are going to have our last presentation before we break for tea. And the presentation will come from Mr. Mapeta. Mr. Douglas Mapeta, who is a member of, who is an official in the Sign Language Academy. Mr. Mapeta, am I right? Yes, there's an official. So please come forward and give us your presentation. You are going to talk about the state of sign language in Zimbabwe, perspectives from Sunrise Sign Language Academy. Thank you.
All protocol observed. Now I use sign language. What am I going to do? I don't need this. Okay. Okay, probably before, who are we? I think it's very critical to know. In 2012, my son was banged by boiling water. We rushed to the hospital, Parinetwa. He was admitted for 3.5 weeks there. During my visit, each and every day, I noticed that doctors were having difficult time in communicating with the parents of the deaf, and even communicating and executing their duties. It touched my heart despite my own problem. Of course, after 3.5 weeks, my son died. As a way to cope up with grief, I said to my wife, I want to go and train. Said, training? I actually said, let's go together to train. And she said, training what? I said, sign language. Because of what I saw in the hospital. So I trained for 18 months, 1 year, 6 months. After completion, I said I have to come up with something that when we talk, people will listen. Now, with the Constitution of Zimbabwe, 2013, which was saying sign language, I took advantage of that. And we registered an entity. That's when Sunrise Sign Language Academy was born. It came up as a tragedy, but to serve the nation. Okay? Okay. Communication key to learning. The Ministry of Higher and Tertiary Education, Science and Technology Development prioritize the need to provide quality education to everyone. The education, however, cannot be realized without an effective mode of communication essential for teaching and learning. Sunrise Language Academy can be likened to the break of a new dawn. It is coming in as a response to what is stated in the Constitution of Zimbabwe, Chapter 1, Founding Provisions. Now, we are quoting and we have been watered down. No problem. But which recognizes sign language as an official language. Okay. And our aim is Sunrise Sign Language Academy is to make sign language a common tool in every household. So if this tool is not in our home, you have to ask yourself, to equip all professionals and you present with skills that will enable them to deliver better services to the community, i.e. signing skills. So if I come to your office with a deaf, you must be able to talk with him, not me, the interpreter. To equip skills which will enable them to incorporate people with special needs in organizations. And I ask this institution, where are the deaf? In your institution. Churches, I hate the pastor. Where are they? Schools, companies, courts of law, our lawyers here, are they there? Hospitals and all else. Sorry? To equip all the sidelines that the deaf community with practical skills that will enable them to alleviate poverty at household level. Promote mutual understanding, academic collaboration, cultural and personal exchanges. Our vision is to bridge the communication gap, which has been prevailing over years. Our motto, the sky is the target, not the limit. We are not limited by the blue firmament. Together, we can bridge the communication gap. Okay, let me go. There's an estimated 360 million deaf people in the world. If we were to create another nation for the deaf people, they can easily form the third most populous nation in the world. Deaf people have their own unique culture, behaviors, and attitude. So how can one work with this unique group? 500,000 to 1 million of this group, or of this figure, they are the deaf people in Zimbabwe. What is it telling you? Use of difficult words, frustrations, medical vocabulary in every is very difficult. Little East English material is understood by them. E.g., for example, tablets, pen. Okay? How can we help solve the frustrations in families, relatives, churches, socialization, schools, and community? Now I'm going to take one by one. The status of sign language in the following institutions and service providers. The society, very little organized work for the deaf. Few leaders or members really understand the deaf or their frustrations. Leaders preoccupied with other important concerns in courts. Important. Ways we can help. Social gatherings for the deaf in Kenya, Zimbabwe, or other countries. Or have your workers to be trained in sign language. That's how we can better serve them. Okay? Church has not utilized sign language as an effective means of communication, thereby frustrating the deaf to be societal misfits. I can ask my pastor here, is your church conversant with sign language? Are there deaf people there? If not, what are we doing about it? Ways we can help. Church needs to embrace basic communication skills because they are our family, relatives, and friends. Health. Most, if not all, the health institutions cannot offer basic health care to the deaf because of the heavy-laden vocabulary used by the medical personnel, e.g. cardiovascular, to a deaf person. Arthritis. Do they understand those terms? Gonorrhea. That's making it difficult for them, the deaf, to get the health care. When they can help health institutions to have staff conversant in sign language. Families usually can't or don't communicate, or if do, only superficially. Deaf often left out even when interpreting is provided. In their family setup, they are left out. How can we help? Train members in signing, and knowing deaf culture. Educate members to appreciate sign language and frustrations of the deaf and how to communicate with deaf people. Show a video on deaf culture. I heard some people, Tonga culture, Ndebele culture, English culture, also the deaf, they've got a culture. Socializing in a meaningful way in the organizations and socials is difficult. Deaf often feel left out because no one takes time to get close. Why? You'll be seeing people playing with their hands, and that's their language. And some of them, they are your own kids, your own uncles. Once we can help, have monthly deaf fellowship. Let me relax on that one. School. There are few schools to accommodate the vast population of the deaf community. This is only done at primary and secondary level. However, the few schools in question have teachers who study special needs but cannot teach the various subjects in sign language. Can the deaf pass and proceed to higher level? Inclusivity. I heard my doctor say, inclusivity. Is there any inclusivity amongst us? No. At higher and tertiary education, there are no institutions to accommodate the deaf to access higher and tertiary education. If so, where are the deaf here? Schools at primary and secondary to have trained teachers in sign language for various subjects. To have ministers of higher and tertiary, have lecturers. Underline that. Lecturers, you looking at me. Are you conversing with sign language? If we say the deaf now are passing, are you ready for them as a university? If not, even to open higher and tertiary centers for the what? For the deaf. Deaf tend to be unemployed at work now and underemployed. It is hard to advance in a company if one can't use the phone. Once the organization can help, be sympathetic to difficult work-related situations. Some deaf may appreciate information on budgeting, how to cut costs and live on less. Help deaf members find meaningful state work. And it's you and me, not any other person. They tend to be cut off from our community. Its activities. It is wonderful that many decide to become part of the deaf community. How many deaf people attend your fun days? And how many deaf people can attend this conference? Once we can help, deaf need to be able to take part in the regional deaf fellowship, if any. Okay? I was on the relatives. But relatives, often a large gap between the deaf and many of their hearing relatives. Men tend to grow closer to deaf world than own relatives. Even many hearing parents do not sign well with their own children. Hearing siblings tend to chat together and leave the deaf out. Ways relatives can help. Well, you can have DVDs, you can have meetings, you can have those in sign language. That's what it can have. Break the silence and bridge the communication gap. But it could be the beginning of greater things in this forum. In Leviticus, I heard everyone was quoting. Now I'm quoting. In Leviticus chapter 19, verse 14, do not curse the deaf, nor put a stumbling block in front of the blind, but fear your God and the Lord. If God who created the deaf is saying, do not curse, if you can go in your dictionary right away on your phone, look at the word curse. It's a terrible word, am I right? And God is just saying, do not curse. By not giving them enough education at this institution, we are cursing the deaf. Together we can bring the what? Trainings done by SASLA. We have managed to do trainings for different sectors in the country as part of our national and social responsibility to make sign language household 2 in Zimbabwe. Okay? Ministry of Higher and Tertiary. We train the curriculum development guys and all others to appreciate sign language. Those are pictures. Okay, National Rehab Center, we trained there. Okay, Sengeza Primary School, I think my doctor will be happy here. We trained all the teachers there, about 58 teachers, they underwent an intensive training in sign language so that they go in line with inclusivity now. Okay? Okay. As SASLA, we are also delighted to inform you that we have got a partnership with Elders Travel, those who travel, in a historic tour to the Holy Land of Israel with the deaf in November 2018. And what are we saying? We have heard a lot of people saying, we have gone to Israel. They have gone to Israel. Now it's chance for Africa and the deaf community. You must be part of it. That's our flyer there. Israel experience. But you must know how to sign. Because we'll be going with the deaf. We have communicated with the deaf in South Africa, the deaf in Kenya, the deaf in Zimbabwe, and the deaf in other countries. We are saying, Israel, here we come. Okay? Then we go project. Now, my daughter, you have to listen to this. Let's go. Okay. Can you play that one, my brother? Just play it. This one is an English teacher at Danico, specializing in teaching the deaf. I want you to hear what she will say. She's a special teacher in teaching the hearing impaired. I'm saying English teacher. Is it? Now technology. Okay. Yeah. You can use this one. Can you start again? Just start again. Start again. Just listen what she's saying. You hear what she's saying? The deaf don't need English. They need sign. I'm saying the deaf do not need your English. They need what? That's why it is called sign language. And they speak what? Signed English. If they want to, for example, if they want to say, you say it's correct, you English teachers here, I'm going to town. But them they'll say, town we go. It's correct. They've been failing for my doctor. Why? Because the mother there does not understand signed English. They passed all these other subjects. And I was asking the curriculum guys about STEM. I said, where are the deaf? Where are the deaf? Is it only the STEM for the hearing? Okay. That's not good there. Okay, Harare Hospital. Also, we trained doctors and nurses at Harare Hospital, and now Harare Hospital is now a haven for the deaf. We trained them. These are doctors at Harare Hospital. We are Doctors Hospital. We trained there. At Zimbabwe, a deaf cooking school, we fuse in and train the deaf how to live well and have nutritious food. Right? Those are the deaf people. Churches. Now my pastor, I think, will be very... Now we are also training pastors in sign language. You are not only a pastor for the hearing, you are also the pastor for the deaf. You must know sign language. And also my lawyers. You are not only the lawyer for the hearing, you must also represent the deaf, but you must be conversant with sign language. We also, there, when this convention was launched, we were part of the presenters there about stopping abuse of drugs. It's alive in the deaf community. And we were sign language training at danger. We were also training in the transport industry. Also clean-up campaign. Now you have to understand that in all sectors, in all CBDs, in all towns, now the deaf are there. Am I right? They are also leaders. Is it correct? So as some representatives, we took upon ourselves and did the clean-up in Harare. We partnered with City of Harare and clean up Harare with the deaf. Training in the police force. We have seen that the police have got a problem. And this I say, they've got a what?
A serious problem.
Thank you. Thank you, my brother. We are also training the police force. Imagine how frustrating it is. One is, say, is abused. How can they communicate with the deaf and report? They was just died. So we are training the police force as well. Result images record. We train them. Interpreters, they have to be conversant with what? Sign language. I mean court interpreters, not hired interpreters. They must know sign language. Bridge communication gap. That was Bait Bridge. We trained the Zimbabwe, the immigration officers. There are a lot of deaf people on the border. We train them. You should treat the deaf with dignity. You have to communicate with them. My brother, my sisters, together we can bridge the communication gap. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mapeta. I can understand the frustration. Okay. I think we all have a part to play. All of us here have a part to play. We need to do something about the issue of sign language. Mr. Mapeta is saying, wherever you go, you hear people saying 5 O levels, including English language. And that does not cater for the deaf. And I think we need to look at that. Dr. Gadin, you have some task. If I bought an expression from Dr. Maja, I think the government is promoting the use of sign language. It is not using it. Am I right, Dr. Maja? Yeah. Okay, thank you. I will take about 2 or 3 questions before we break for tea.
I know people have a lot of questions for Mr. Zimbabwe. I know them and comments. So let's try to be as brief as is possible so that we can get the best out of him. I'll begin with the Reverend. The Reverend.
Thank you. My question is directed to Dr. Lee. You spoke about the ministry facilitating publications of material in indigenous languages. I would love to get some more flesh on exactly what is being done. Thank you.
You can pass it on to him.
Thank you. Mine is more of a comment in addition to the Canaanese resolution. I want to highlight that on what the government is doing about the promotion of indigenous languages. In 2014, the government of Zimbabwe, in partnership with UNICEF, as the funding partner, mandated the Zimbabwe University in training teachers in indigenous languages. And they started training in 2015, and they started with the same indigenous languages, namely Chitonga or Changani, sign language, Chinambia, Chikalana, Chivenda, Chisotho, and Chitonga. And these trainees are doing BEd primary and BEd secondary. And the first book is finishing this year. Thank you very much.
And there was no Chikunda and sign language.
Sign language is there. Sign language used to be a course under special education. Now we are having teachers training in sign language as a degree. There's now a PhD in sign language. And I think the first group of 24 students are especially finishing this year.
That should be exciting news, eh?
Yeah.
Okay.
You need to sit within channels.
My question is directed to the SLUCA representative. I saw from your abstract that you indicated that in your organization, your organization is made up of representatives from six languages. But when you finally presented, you said 13, and some of them you recruited no presence. And I was wondering, how do you select representation from the different languages? Because I'm of the opinion that the people that you choose to represent, people or speakers of other languages, should be selected by the people themselves, and they should be accepted by the people themselves. Have you already consulted? Because I heard maybe you were joking that the also accommodating, you have already recruited some members. I think it may be very dangerous because the Chikunda guy may not actually be a speaker of Chikunda, but someone who is just interested in Chikunda. It's very important, I think, for people who are really concerned, who are really speakers of those languages to be included, even
the first one, if it is the first one, why are you worried about a language without a culture? Because they are no longer actually gathered because of other policies like the World Life Management, whatever policies. So, yeah.
So she's saying if a language is not without a culture, just like looking at how to run a foundation. So, all right, I will take the last two questions before we